Okay. We're going to be going over NIC installation tonight for our lab, Chapter 6 for your review question and quiz. Next week we'll be doing TeamViewer. Anybody use TeamViewer before? Remote TeamViewer? Okay, cool. We'll be doing that one as a remote lab. You'll start the lab in here, and then you'll get with somebody, at least one other person, to take the second part of the lab home and to remote into each other's machine. You just got to promise you won't hack into each other's machine and do anything malicious. So, but no, that's a fun one because remoting in to computers from anywhere in the world is basically second nature now in networking. You're remoting into multiple servers from a tablet device. So gone are the days where you had to be in the location to do work. You can be anywhere in the world and remote in. And one of those softwares you can use is TeamViewer. The other one I'll write up on the board, the one I've used for a number of years, which I can recommend to you. You get 5 free PC or Macs to connect to with this service, logmein.com. Logmein.com is a free remote connectivity service. You download a small client once you register, and then from that client, or from that point on, you can access that machine from any web browser. They have Mac clients, Linux, and PC clients. Okay, you get up to 5 machines free. Above that is cost. All right, more than that cost. Let me show you real quick what it looks like. Because I do recommend students getting this because you can remote into your home PC if you forget something at home. You can't tell your teacher you forgot it at home because you can log in and get it. Okay, here's the interface. Okay, in the interface of logmein.com, I've got a PC, a Mac, and then this PC in front of me. I'll go ahead and click on the PC first. Generally recommend updating anytime it tells you to. Any plugins. Doesn't take too long generally. And what's great about LogMeIn is, again, it's free, number one. Number two, they have configurations in there to where you can do, like, say, you can set up certain scans. You can actually set it up to record every time you log in, record your session. What you're doing on that machine can be recorded to that local machine. That way when you come back later, you can see a video of what you did. Okay, so if you went in and it's 3 in the morning, you configured a server. Every time you access LogMeIn on a server, it'll record that session, which is great tool to have. So I'm logging in directly to a PC in my day job, and as I'm sitting right in front of it, okay, and there's my Windows development platform, or .NET development platform. Then I can access everything as I would if I was sitting right there on my computer. Again, that's logmein.com. And so if I don't have access to a certain program, let's say, in my location where I'm at, I've got 2 monitors on my machine here, and I can actually switch them real quick. I'll switch over to the next monitor. I think I've got that monitor turned off, so it's not going to let me see anything. Let's fire up like going to move these over to the bigger monitor. See a little bit better. There we go. Okay, so from whatever location I'm at, I can access my work. I can compile it, run it, debug it, whatever it is I want to do. I can also access this from my iPad as well. There's an iPad client for Log Me In. And so I'm literally doing work from any location. And this has been around for, I think, around 9 years. I've had it for around 8 years. And all I've ever had is a free service, and they've always had the 5 free, up to 5 free. Beyond that, you have to pay, and I've always kept under 5. Okay, usually one at home, one here, one at my day job as a programmer, and I think I had one at one time on my mom's PC when she was alive, and helped her fix her machine anytime she wanted it, and so pretty cool. So that's accessing, let's see, the PC. Now let me show you accessing, for instance, a Mac computer. Home tab. And this is my Mac server at home, where I usually just keep this one on for my PHP web development class. And I can log in if it's having issues or if I need to restart it. I kept this document up here. I was actually working. What's nice about it is you can, like, in this case, I kept a document up here I was working on for next semester for my 180 class. And when I get time, I just log into it and keep working on it. You know, I don't have to worry about, closing it out or sending it in my USB drive or email it to myself. Just leave it right there on the computer. But I have access to everything on my Mac interface with dealing with my PHP programming or whatever. I can access it there. Then what's really cool about this I really like is the administration features. You can set up administration features to on the local side. It has to be on the local side. Can't be on the, I can't do it from here, I don't believe, remotely, but I have to be on the actual remote side where it's hosted at. I can set up recording features. Let me go back there to the help one. The user guide. Okay, here it is. There's the cool stuff here. All right, now you do have to get pro account for this, but if you have a business, it's not that expensive, but you can set up on a pro account with LogMeIn Pro, Windows updates and managing Windows servers, having full featured server updates. You can update services, update service packs, manage antivirus, rebooting the host. So even if the machine is shut down, you can restart it. And actually on the free account, you can do that as well. So if one of my machines was actually not in service at the time, it was shut down, there is a way that I can connect to it on some of these direct connects over here or support links. Right here where it says start remote control here, I can go to the main. I can add a note, go to my computer properties, It'll tell me if I need any updates. Has a critical update, it looks like, available on that one. 1 important, 26 optional. Tells me my subscription. Then over here on the left, it's got on report viewer, this is how you've accessed and when you've accessed your machine, at what time, and for what lengths. And if I was actually at that location, what's cool about it is I can actually, there's a file on the machine that I can go to I can play the videos of every one of these sessions. I think it keeps like up to a gig and then it deletes the videos. But it is nice. I have used it before. If I've went in and done something and forgot how I did it, I can watch a video. That works pretty good. So again, logmein.com, definitely recommend it. The difference between logmein.com and what we're going to use next week, which is TeamViewer. TeamViewer is more of a one-time thing. Every time you use TeamViewer, the user you're helping has to give you a code, an access code, and a password, which makes it good for like help desk type scenarios. This is a constant connection to whatever you set it up on. Whatever server or client you set it up on is a constant connection. Yes?
With LogMeIn, that's just the 2 PCs. Can you get through the servers also?
Yeah, I can connect this.
You have full access at home through your Mac.
Exactly, to everything.
We're sitting right here.
Right, as I'm sitting right there, correct. And so you can do it right to the server, or you can do it to any client, and then from that client remote into the server once you're in that location. That's generally what I recommend doing, having it on a desktop or something outside the server room, and then connecting it that way. But yeah, any type of Mac or PC up to 5, totally free, pretty good. And so I definitely recommend doing that, and it saved me a lot of time, a lot of headaches over the years. Okay. Let's shift gears here to we're going to actually discuss mainly tonight on NIC and hardware last week we did LAN. This week we're going to actually go more into hardware of how those LANs are connected using switches, hubs, routers, and all the way down to the NIC card, which is the component that the Ethernet plugs into, your Ethernet cable plugs into. And also look at some of the functions we've talked about thus far, management for LANs called VLANs, virtual LANs, that we have here on campus actually. And then explain some of the purposes of routing within networking. And then we'll end with the IPv6 protocols. So, how many here has installed a NIC card before? You've done it before? Okay, cool. I just want to kind of get a feel here. Everybody's going to get a chance to uninstall and install. It's pretty painless installing a NIC card for the most part. If you've never done it before, it's fairly easy. But NICs basically are connectivity devices that enable you to transmit data from your machine to the network. It's a transceiver that transmits and receives data constantly. It's on the physical and data link layer of the OSI model. And it issues data signals constantly. If you're in a row where you can see behind you and see the NIC cards, you can actually see the lights blinking with the activity. And they have assembly and disassembly frames constantly working all the time, sending out frames and disassembling them, assembling frames as they come in, interpreting physical addresses that are coming in from other machines, other routers, other servers, and then determining the right to transmit data. NICs are a smart device, meaning it knows the activity that's coming through. What I mean by that is main activity coming through NIC cards, TCP, Transfer Control Protocol, UDP. Then you also have MMS, IP, okay? Just to name a few of the protocols that are coming across the network at all times, all right? TCP, IP are the two main ones. UDP is a secondary, and UDP is generally going to be used for constantly, if you're connected to a server, it's constantly using the UDP port to see the health of that connection. But it performs prioritization on the NIC card, network management, any buffering that needs to happen. What that means is if it sees collision on your network, meaning you have heavy traffic, that's where collision occurs, it'll begin buffering data for you automatically. It sees, okay, the network's slow here. I'm going to start slowing things down on purpose to get the data I know that's coming my way. Traffic filtering is if you have high traffic in your network or even low traffic, it filters out traffic. What I mean by filtering, it knows where the data needs to go when it comes into your computer. Okay, what port it needs to go to, what software it needs to work with. Does not analyze the information. This is added by the layer 3 through 7 on the OSI model protocols. It's very common network device, but it's also very important. Most of your computers come with an embedded NIC card today and soldered on the motherboard. And used to, years ago when computers first came out, that was not the case. You had a slot like we're going to use tonight to take out the NIC card and put one back in when it went bad. But most of your newer computers, laptops, have a soldered NIC card on the motherboard. A crude example of it, but it's just soldered on the motherboard, and it talks on the system bus, and that's it. Okay? Versus what we're going to do tonight, which kind of a top-down view of a motherboard, you've got slots available to you, ISA slots, ISA slots, and PSI slots that basically can fit NIC cards and even video cards. Some of you might have done video cards in the past too. So before installing or ordering a NIC or going out to Best Buy and buying one or any computer store, you need to know the interface type. Generally, before you go and purchase a NIC card, you want to take the old one out. It'll say right on the NIC card the manufacturer of that NIC. I generally recommend that same manufacturer that it came with. You might not be able to find the same model, because if it's an older NIC card, you might not be able to find the same model, but same manufacturer, meaning Intel, 3Com. It's good to stay in the same family. Those are, by the way, the top 2 manufacturers you'll find in NIC installation or NIC manufacturing. NIC dependencies has an access method that are dependent upon transmission speed. The connector interfaces, this is where your plug-in, your Cat5 plugs right into that you guys created a few weeks back. It has to be compatible to the motherboard. When I say most, I mean in the last 4 or 5 years. If it's a computer in the last 4 or 5 years, it has a available slot available for a NIC card. You're not going to have any issues with any of the new NIC cards. What I mean by that is if you buy a 3Com or you buy an Intel NIC card, it's not going to have any issues with it. For the most part, your motherboard will be compatible with it. And also, NICs are dependent upon, they all have separate manufacturers, as ones I've already mentioned, and there's a number of them out there. The NIC falls upon the bus. I mentioned the word bus here, this nice little drawing, but we'll see one better in a little bit. But basically on your motherboard, you have basically lines along your motherboard, okay? These lines on your motherboard that are soldered in there are the bus that the electrical data, digital data travels upon, okay? When your NIC card is seated into the motherboard, it travels along the bus. Your motherboard has certain pathways that bus follows, and every motherboard developer has different pathways. But same technology for all of them though. The motherboard uses the transmit data to computers components like memory, processor, hard disk, and NIC card. It differs according to capacity, the bus does, by the path and the clock speed. In olden days, like 10 years ago, you used to be able to do what's called, you could increase the clock speed, you could double the clock speed. With these newer motherboards, they don't really recommend it because with a quad core and even double quad core motherboards, they have plenty of speed already built into the motherboard. There's no need to up that bus. The data path size, basically again, according to the motherboard, they'll have different path sizes for the devices and the speed upon those devices once they're connected. The newer motherboards within the last couple of years, though, are all basically the same. There's not much difference in motherboard technologies and manufacturing. Then we go into the term called expansion slot when it comes to motherboard and getting into NIC technology. Basically, most of your motherboards will have multiple contacts or slots available to put expansion cards in there. An expansion card is just an expansion of the board. An expansion card can be a video card, a NIC card, a TV card, just to name 3 popular ones. Okay. Another one could be, I don't know, a scanner at the desk at the checkout when you go to the grocery store. They have a special card for those as well. The scanners, the handheld scanners, those have special cards as well that go in expansion slots. Most of your devices I just mentioned just now, scanners, even video, a lot of those components now are converting from motherboard slots to USB. Okay, they're converting them to that. They have been for a while. Not to say you can't still get expansion cards for motherboards, but a lot of your newer PCs don't have many slots available, if any. Sometimes they have none. You have your embedded NIC, and that's it. If it goes, you got to get a USB to Ethernet converter, which you can get. It plugs in your USB port, and it's got an Ethernet plug-in for your Ethernet connectivity. And we'll look at some here in a second. So basically, expansion cards help you connect to that, the brains of the computer, which is followed upon the bus, and the brains would be the computer central control device, and how it controls all the devices upon that bus, depending upon, again, the manufacturer, how many slots are available, and what your needs are, basically. There's multiple bus types. The first is PCI. It's the most popular on the NIC installation. You'll see some tonight. PCI runs upon 2 paths, a 32-bit or 64-bit path. Most of you are probably running, I'm guessing tonight, if you have a newer computer, a 64-bit computer. If you're at work, most of your work computers are still 32-bit because they're just not upgraded all of them yet. Clock speeds, this determines the rate of that bus I was talking about, how fast data flows. So you got from 33 to say 133 megahertz. Maximum data transfer, 1 gigabit per second. PCI was introduced by Intel in '92. You remember the Blue Guys commercials possibly with Intel that you don't really hear about anymore. But believe me, they're definitely still around and still popular because Intels are pretty much in every computer we've got today and even phones. The latest version of PCI is 3.0 in 2004. And you say that's old for a while back, 2004. That's why I mentioned earlier about the USB, going that route. And not only that, a lot of computers now, and even desktops, laptops now, are really not using many peripheral devices. You know, when's the last time you used a CD or DVD on your computer? Or when's the last time you plugged in, except for a USB drive for data, a USB device for anything besides a data port to plug in an external drive or a USB thumb drive? Most people just don't use those devices anymore. We use what? The cloud. We use our email, online email, cloud devices like Google, Dropbox, things of that nature, or we do all of our file storage. ICE is the next type. It's the industry standard architecture is what it stands for. Originally in the early 80s, when I started building PCs, a lot of these NIC cards were around. The one that's showing the picture at the top, though, is a PCI NIC, which you guys will be mainly playing with tonight. There is 1 or 2 old computers in here. It looks like, I believe it's on the back row there. That's an old server. And the front row over here, you might have the older ISA card in yours. You'll find it's older. You'll know it's older because it's longer. The data path's longer. And what I mean by that is the metal tines at the bottom are longer on the ISA bus. The PCI bus, it's shorter than the ISA, faster data transmission, and PC and Mac compatible. So ISA, when it first came out in the 80s, mainly IBMs were the machines used then, because that's all there was around, was IBMs, and Macintosh, which had their own proprietary NIC cards. So you had the Apple II, Apple IIe, then you had the IBM 5155 back in the 80s when they first came out, and that's it. But then as it progressed, it began in the late 80s, the PCI actually began to flourish and be compatible with both PC and Mac, both. Then came the PCI Express. The PCI Express, you'll notice the path is even smaller than the first two. It runs on a 32 or 64-bit bus, maximum 133 megahertz clock speed, transfer rate 500 megabits per data path, full duplex, meaning going and coming all the time, full-fledged data transfer. The advantage of PCIe over PCI Express over PCI, more efficient data transfer, quality of service is better, much better in handling errors, collisions, things of that nature. With the older PCI cards, if you had a collision on your network, it would just stop stuff on your NIC card. Nothing would happen. You just have to wait. Restart your computer a lot of times, solved it, but maybe not. And so it's just kind of finicky on the error correcting. Today's computers and the NIC cards you guys have today, the built-in NIC cards and even the PCI Expresses, are smart enough to know what they use the term self-healing. Kind of like Windows has been since probably second version of Vista. Meaning if something does lock up on your machine today with Windows 7, if you just let it sit there for a moment, it'll self-heal itself. It'll basically fix itself. The operating system figures it out, fixes it. Late 80s, early 90s, no. Blue screen of death. That's what we got, blue screen of death. If there was a conflict on anything you installed, let's say a NIC card like we're doing tonight, if you installed the wrong NIC on the machine, put the drivers in, the CD drive, or at that time when we first started, it was floppy drive, we didn't have CD drive, like 4 or 5 floppies to install a driver. If it was a wrong driver to the NIC card, it could literally lock your computer up and go blue screen. Lock it up. Done. And many times had to just re-image the whole computer. It was much simpler than trying to figure out how to fix the issue that was caused by installing the wrong driver. Okay? Today, not so much. Windows 7 might freeze a little bit, and I have actually seen Windows 7 blue screen on a few things. But for the most part, it's going to heal itself and say, okay, you know, this driver's not going to work. I'm going to disable this NIC card until you fix it, is what it's going to do. It'll literally disable the device. If you try something over and over again on these newer computers today, and we've had this happen in here actually, where students have tried something over and over again on a NIC card, it'll disable it. Not using it. It'll disable it for 10 minutes. Just let it sit there. Nope. And then 10 minutes time, start back up, it's working. And so that's a built-in part of that NIC and of the operating system today. PCI Express slots differ from conventional PCI. They vary in the lanes as are supported. And what I mean by lanes is you'll see this when you do the NIC installation tonight. These are very nice drawings. Yeah, you've got these right here, these little slots, okay? These are called the lanes in here. These would be the lanes that they fall upon here. Okay? These little slots are the lanes that it falls upon. And that's what be seen from a side view of the NIC card. From a top view of the NIC, when you guys do your NIC installation tonight, you'll actually see, like for this card here, you'd have actually 2 slots available here for these slot ridges to fit over. And so really, you can try to force your NIC card in the wrong way, but there's really, if you look at it, There's only one way to fit it in. Generally what you'll see is on a NIC card for the slots, the paths, you'll notice on this one here I drew where this is a little bit longer here than these two to make it easier to realize where it fits at in the NIC card and on the slots available to you for that motherboard. So it varies on the lanes supported. Lanes offer what's called full duplex. All that means is, full duplex means data is going in and data is going out all at the same time. Up to 500 megabits per second. It supports up to 16 lanes in PCI Express, 18 slot, 8 gigabits per second throughput on a PCI Express. PCI Expresses can also be, another term for that is for video cards. Video cards use a more of an express route type of slot because videos need really quick speed, because it's video. And so it's going to need untethered speed at the most throughput possible for that data to flow through. Especially if you have, say, a PCI Express type slot for, say, some of you might have, I don't know, cable running through your TV. They literally have NIC card. They literally have cards that plug in your cable from your cable provider right into the card, and then you can program your computer to record your TV shows and to watch TV right there on the computer. Okay, tons of devices out there to do that. Pinnacle is probably the #1 manufacturer of what I just mentioned. Pinnacle hardware has both USB and Express type of cards to put in your computers. I used to have one in the basement years ago to record, this was before DVRs came around, record the shows through the week that we weren't home to watch. The kids had certain sports shows when they were home, the wife, soap opera I think it was, One Life to Live, I don't know, something like that. Okay, but I used this Pinnacle software along with the hardware, which was a slot card and an Express card, and set it up downstairs, just set up the recording, and it just did its stuff. And then I could stream it or burn it to DVD and then watch it later. Here's a really good screenshot actually of all the different types of slots that you could have on a motherboard, starting with the left to the right. Left would be the oldest, right would be the newest type. ISA, you'll notice ISA is the longest path. PCI Express even shorter. PCI Express times 16 longer. The middle PCI Express times 1 and the PCI are the only ones really around today. Generally, PCI Express is going to be the ones only around today on newer motherboards, brand new motherboards. But when you go and work for places, you will see more than likely just the PCI and the PCI Express, not the ISA. ISAs, you're talking 12, 13, 14 years ago, 14 years ago plus was the ISA slots. And I believe some of these actually have, I know the front server does have that in there.
Scanner cards used to run in those.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But basically documentation, which I never read, it says to read documentation, but I'll just be honest, I don't read documentation until I need to, which means, I broke something and I got to read it.
Are you recommending that to your students?
No, I'm not recommending that, but I'm not going to tell you that you won't do that, all right? But, it does say everywhere to read documentation of the motherboard. A lot of your motherboard documentation today, though, is all online, PDF'd. The only thing I actually ever read on motherboard documentation anymore is I'm wanting to upgrade memory, and that's about it. Everything else is compatible. What I mean by that is if I had to install a NIC card, I could go buy any name brand NIC card and it would work in newer motherboards. But memory is a different story. You generally have to check your motherboard documentation for memory location and memory type that it takes. You can also look inside the PC case itself. That's a good one. See what it looks like before you go out and purchase it. This is what I generally do. I will literally take the motherboard, take the case off to expose the motherboard, take the NIC card out that's fried. You say, what generally fries the NIC card? I'm glad you asked. What generally fries the NIC cards, in my experience, is power storms, thunderstorms. A surge of power can fry a whole room like this. if we weren't plugged into. I've even seen it though plugged into surge protectors, still blow the surge protector through the surge protector into the NIC card, gone. Okay, but they're fairly inexpensive. If you buy bulk, if I buy like more than 20, I can get them for probably $10 a piece, $12 a piece, something like that. So they're not too expensive. And I've had to do that before. I literally have had to install entire labs of NIC cards because of power storms, okay, in Rockford, which we've had some pretty good ones in the last 13 years. And so, but that does happen, and it could happen at home as well. Now, if it happened at home and you have a newer motherboard, you're more than likely you don't have a slot available to you for a new NIC card, a slot NIC card, like say a PCI Express. You can purchase, and we'll see some here in just a second, some pictures of some USB to Ethernet cards, Ethernet devices, basically the conversion from Ethernet to USB. Peripheral bus standards, you basically, anything that's the word peripheral means outside of, so we're getting ready to talk about things outside of the computer now. And when computers first began to use the NIC technology, we didn't have inside of. All we had was outside of. Because the first few years, there was no internal NIC cards in your computer. You had what we're getting ready to talk about, which is cards, and then also you had USB 1.0, and then you had slot cards, PCI cards. These are very easy to install, these peripheral bus cards. They're what they call was Personal Computer Memory Card International Association, or PCM-CIA. These set standards for external attached cards, and they had everything from NIC cards to memory cards. These were NIC cards to memory cards to dial-up modems, just to name three that were used heavily when they first came out. The first one I had was a 3Com. It was 10 megabits per second. It was my first PCMI card in a laptop that did not have an Ethernet port because that laptop had not, when it came out, did not develop an Ethernet port. It wasn't until that year it was developed. And I think that was in 1988. And it was an IBM laptop.
What replaced the PCM-CIA? There was one that came out for a while.
Yeah, we're going to actually look at one here in a second. The PC card is the first standardized card adapter. It ran on a 16-bit bus running at a whopping 8 megahertz, which is really dirt slow. But hey, it worked. And actually, mine wasn't a 10100, mine was just a 10 when it came out. That's all I had, a 10. But it was a year later it came out with a 10100. But mine was a 3Com. It plugged in the side of your laptop. It had really tiny pins on the left side there, and you had to be careful. In fact, IT department told us at that time just to keep it in your laptop, don't take it out, because the pins are so easily to bend in the laptops with these. The right side, you would push it in and it would pop out, and then you would plug in your Ethernet cord into there. Okay, your RJ45 would fit there. The only part you would move would be that part right there. You'd make sure before you left at night, you took out your RJ45 and then gently pushed in that, because if you messed up that mechanism there on the top right, you had to get a whole new card. So that was real finicky as well. Wasn't the most sturdiest, and if you hit the corner of a table or something, it was gone. So this one was the 90s, 32-bit motherboard, which is all we had then, 33 megahertz. It matches the PCI expansion standard. Then the Express standard came out. Many different external devices came out on this one now to connect to portable computers. They had a 26-pin interface, a lot of little pins, very little, very tiny, almost hair in length or in circumference, very small. Data transfer rate was pretty good though. Went from 250 megabits per second in each direction. Same data transfer as a PCI Express. And they had a 34 millimeter and a 54 millimeter width to these. And that's what those look like. Express card modules. These were generally used for memory, programs, VPN, security. I can remember one I used for memory one time, and then one was for an application would run off these devices. A certain application we had would run off this device using an express card module. These modules also fit in desktops as well. Okay, they had cards to fit in desktops as well. And the reason all these came about and were so popular in the early 90s was you still had older computers you were dealing with it. They hadn't yet cycled into the newer computers that had the newer NIC cards in it and such. And so these cards were pretty popular for probably 2 to 3 years. Okay, and then they kind of went down after the NIC cards came into play on all computers. Then the USB came out. USB standard first was 1.0, dirt slow. I was in graphic design when this came out. I was a graphic designer, and at that time you had two types of devices for USB, or two types of devices for connecting external. One was USB, one was FireWire. Okay, FireWire was much faster, like 10 times as fast as USB 1.0. And you generally found it in cameras and Macintosh. Macintosh was the first computers that actually had a built-in FireWire in the devices themselves. PCs came around about a year later in mid-90s. But FireWire was all you had as far as speed-wise, because 1.1 was very slow, 12 megabits per second. Then 2.0 came around, started creeping up near the FireWire speed, 480 megabits per second. Then the future, which we don't have as yet, is a super speed, 4.8 gigabits per second for USB. Okay, here's a NIC card I talked about earlier that is a USB NIC card. I've had to use these before in a pinch when something broke on my computer at work or at home. And they work. They work just fine. You plug them in, load the software, and you're in business. The only problem with this is it sticks out of your computer, and you got to kind of be careful because, you know, if you keep it in a good isolated area, you're fine. But if it's an area of high traffic or something, it's easy for people to kick it or knock into it. But it does work. Okay, and I've used it both on desktops and laptops. And it's good to kind of keep. I actually have one or two around I keep all the time just in case. You never know. You might need it. And then FireWire. FireWire is actually the one I wanted to really hit hard because this is still one of my favorite modes of connection with devices externally. Because FireWire has really one component that's really unique, and meaning it has power within the wire on a 6-pin FireWire device. That you do not have to have external wires to connect into the wall, external power. The power's in the wire. There's actually 2 of those wires devoted to power to where, and this was actually in the early 90s, like 95, I had my first external DVD drive, and it did not have to have an external, did not have to have a plug in the wall power cord. It was actually in the 6-pin. The 6-pin FireWire gave you 2 of those pins were for electrical to run through. Apple, as I already mentioned, began this. IEEE set a standard in 95, 15 years later. Okay? Traditional FireWire connection is 400 megabits. And the reason why, by the way, the IEEE didn't get a hold of it till then, the standards and the protocols used for FireWire were actually developed by Apple, and they didn't release them until 82. Didn't release the patents or anything until 82. So that's why you didn't see protocols and standards or in PCs really, because they wouldn't let go of the standards, wouldn't let go of the protocol. And PCs, as you might guess, had to pay some pretty big bucks for that. And it really never went over on PCs, by the way. FireWire never really hit home, I don't think, on PCs at all. It might have been for a few years, but that's about it. the newer version of FireWire is 3 gigabits per second. It connects to most peripheral devices, okay? Cameras, scanners, external drives, external hard drives are great for FireWire. The speed is just astronomical. It connects small networks too. You can connect, if you have 2 FireWire NICs, you can connect, 2 FireWire connections on a computer. You can connect those 2 and talk to each other really quick. Really easy setup. FireWire, similar to USB and PCMI, simple installation, but the kicker is a 4 and 6 pin connector. The 4 pin does not have power in the cord. The 6 pin does. It has 2 pins supplying the power, and that's where to me, the selling point of FireWire is right here. Because you can still today buy external FireWire devices that do not have to have power plugged in the wall. So you can literally have your laptop, plug in FireWire, done. You're working, okay? And the power's running through two of the wires going to the device. You find most of these devices I'm talking about today in external hard drives. I've got like a 500 gigabyte external FireWire. And I also have a 2 terabyte FireWire. That if it was USB, in fact, it comes with both. It comes with a FireWire, and then it comes with a USB with a power plug-in. So if you use USB, you have to plug it in the wall. Okay? And so it's great for power consumption, less power consumption, and portable, because you don't have to be around an external plug-in to use the device. And so it's really nice to have. And so anytime you get a chance to look at FireWire, you don't hear much about it today, but it's still very popular. FireWire is.
Did they make express cards with FireWire?
Do I know?
Did they make an express card with FireWire in it?
No. Actually, the ports will look just like this for your ports going into the computer. And basically, you're going to have a male-to-male port, and basically, you can have a 4 or 6, and then you just plug it in. It's a special port, actually, a special card. You can buy cards that plug into the slots for FireWire. Yeah, definitely you can. You can also, if I'm not mistaken, which I don't see the reason for this, but you can get a USB to FireWire, which I've used before, but it's kind of slow. Because if you think about it, it's the USB technology is not as fast as the FireWire technology, but they can work together. But in my experience, the best way to use it is to have it built into a card device on the Mac or PC. Generally today, you'll see this used still a lot. Digital photography uses FireWire. Newspapers, magazines, graphic designers that have heavy data moving all the time will use FireWire devices because it needs to be portable, in the field, reporters type will use these type of devices because of that. So consumers, and FireWire devices are a little bit more pricier than USB, but you know, you get what you paid for, and you know, you have the convenience of those 2 wires powering a device. Compact flash is the next. It came in, it was ultra small, and yes, these were used in computers for years. Compact flash had slots in desktops, laptops, late 90s, and ultra small, removable data, input-output devices. You guys are most familiar with compact flash and digital cameras probably when they first came out. The latest standard for compact flash is 4.0. It does have a pretty good data transfer rate of 133 megabits per second. The uses connecting devices to small PCMI slots, because what they had is you had your card slots, your cards basically, that had converters to use your compact flash for memory. Okay, so you could add more memory to your laptops and to your desktops when they first came out. They do have also wireless connections now too. In fact, I think it's 2 wires, the name of it. 2 wire. Number 2 wire has it's not a compact flash, but it's an SD card that has built-in Wi-Fi. in the iWire is the name of it, I believe. iWire, E-Y-E wire. You can get them at Walmart. I think they're about 30 or 40 bucks a piece, something like that, for an 8 gig one. But on that one, you can actually you have it plugged into your camera, right? Walk into a Wi-Fi connection, and it'll basically, if you have it set up right on your camera, it'll connect to that Wi-Fi and then dump your photos to what the location you want them to be dumped to as soon as it hits a Wi-Fi connection. Here's a compact flash card to NIC, which works. And then I've already talked about this, but onboard NIC cards are the most popular today. In fact, you probably have those at home on your laptop, desktop. Advantages of these is it saves space, frees expansion slots, and it saves money as well, because it's cheaper to create an onboard NIC than it is to put in a full-fledged NIC card in a computer. And most of your computers today have a very small footprint. And what I mean by that is the devices themselves might not be no bigger than this, and that's it. That's your computer. You're done. Okay? So you're not going to have a lot of room for large NIC cards to fit in those devices, so that's where the embedded ones fit well. Okay, here's a plethora of going into wireless now, different wireless antennas you can get. Wireless NICs, very popular. You're installing a new computer out in the basement or upstairs. You don't want to run wires. You can buy a wireless NIC, install it in minutes, done. Works great. I've used them before. Disadvantage over wire-bound NICs, they are a little bit more expensive. So where a NIC might be 30 bucks, a wireless NIC might be 45, 50 bucks. Not that much more expensive, but if your wife doesn't want you running wires, which mine doesn't, you use wireless NIC cards. Okay? Bandwidth and security limitations with Wi-Fi, with WPA2, enterprise and personal, what you guys would have at home, plenty secure for home use today. But there are the only disadvantage I could see, really, a little bit more expensive, but really when you come around not having to run wires, not having to worry about that, it's kind of a wash. So when you're installing NICs, pretty simple. Install the hardware, the software. All of your NICs will come in the box with the software, okay, a CD, generally a mini CD because they don't want to waste money. So they give you the mini CDs, the little small ones. Configure the firmware. Generally, you do not have to do that anymore. I haven't had to configure firmware in probably 6 years. And you never probably will. You guys never probably have to configure firmware. And what this is basically just overwriting data on the ROM of the NIC card, the read-only memory. It's basically memory of the NIC card, what it does. Generally, for the most part, I'll just go ahead and say you probably will never have to do this in your environment. And if you ever do see a firmware update, I'm going to tell you not to do it, because generally you'll function fine without that firmware update on the NIC card. You won't ever need it. It won't hurt to keep it just like it is. Okay? Because if you do apply a firmware that is not needed or it's a wrong firmware, you fry the NIC card. You got to buy a new one. So generally firmware updates, just so you know, are for larger companies that need something else, like IBM, like a Microsoft, and they bought these NIC cards, and the company will update the firmware to fit those other companies, and all it says on their website is firmware update, but it doesn't say it's made for this, was originally made for this company to fit this hardware or whatever. Okay? EEPROM in the NIC is basically electrical, erasable, programmable, read-only memory. It applies electrical charges to the NIC card. This is the area of the NIC card you got to be important. We'll talk about when we do the NIC installation, where the case mods of your cases on both laptops and desktops even are made of a material that when you rub your hands on these material, it will destatify any electricity that's in your hands. Okay? You can also get wrist wraps to ground you, which I've never used in 25 years, never had a problem. But the technical way to do it is to do that. If you go to any shop today that works on computers, you hardly ever see them use those wrist grounds anymore. What it is basically is just a little wristband with a wire that runs from your wristband screwed somewhere into the metal pole somewhere on the table. But if you don't sit there and rub your feet on the floor and run back and forth like a maniac before touching the NIC card, you're generally okay, right? And you rub the side of the PCs. I'll show you how to do it before we do it. But if you do touch the NIC card with a lot of electrostagnetic material in your hands, it can fry the NIC card, okay? So you do want to make sure you're, and some people actually carry more of this than others, by the way. Okay, some of you shock people all the time with your hands, I don't know, or touch the door, you shock it, Some people do carry more electricity than others, all right? So you just might have to rub the outside of the PC a little bit more than the next person. While I'm talking about touching things inside the PC, when we do touch the NIC card tonight, make sure and never touch the metal tines at the bottom of the NIC card that you'll see. Okay, the metal tine at the bottom. Don't touch that. Your oil on your fingers will destroy the connectivity. The acid, your fingers not only have oil, but they have some type of acid. All of us do. Not going to hurt anybody, but it can hurt the actual NIC card, okay? Especially what happens is when it gets on these tines, and then you plug it in and seat it into the motherboard, and then electricity hits it, that's when the frying occurs, basically. Just a little moisture, a little oil will do that. So if you just don't touch that, you're good to go. And when you buy a new NIC card, it usually comes in a kind of a cellophane type of wrapper, kind of like aluminum type of wrapper. I always tell students to keep it in the wrapper the entire time until right before you get ready to install it. Okay, take it out, because that wrapper is actually made to protect the tines. It also protects, it has kind of a silicone covering on the actual NIC itself, the NIC card itself, that kind of keeps it, from rusting and things of that nature. And so keep it in there until you want it leastly exposed, limited exposure to air basically, and also your fingers before putting them in. Make sure your hands are clean and dry as well before you do it. Do the first one like I don't do. Read the manufacturer documentation. Again, I've been installing NIC cards for 25 years. I've literally never read the manufacturing documentation for a NIC card. I haven't. I've read the cover. I know what it says, I know what kind it is, and it matches my motherboard, and it's okay. But beyond that, I don't read anything else. Okay? Install the expansion card NIC. There's generally, where it says toolkit, most of your PCs today don't even need a screwdriver to open them up. Okay? They have levers and they have, plastic things you pull off to get to your NIC card. Okay? You have no screws at all, none. Gateways do that, Dells do that, NEC does that. No longer do you have to have a screwdriver or toolkit to get to your NIC card, or even your hard drive, or even your memory, a lot of times. Unplug it. I recommend this for all computers, old and new. Unplug it and let it set for 10 minutes. And when I say unplug it, not only plug it from the power, unplug all your peripherals, monitor, keyboard, mouse, anything that's peripheral at all. Just unplug everything, let it set for 10 minutes before doing anything. And what that's going to do is it's going to take, how I was taught, and it's worked for me over the years, it'll take any electricity that's in that case mod or in that power supply and deplete it for the most part in 10 minutes. Okay? You should be good. 10 minutes, just let it set. Minimum 10 minutes. You can set it for 20 minutes, 30 minutes, but minimum 10 minutes. All right? Then ground yourself. Again, the book tells you to do this. If you go train for PC repair, which I've certified PC repair and was trained in that, but I've never actually done it in a job ever. Use a ground strap ever. Never have. Never had a problem. And again, as long as you're not, rubbing your feet on the ground, taking and rubbing your hands together, rubbing your hair, I don't know. I mean, if you're not doing anything crazy, you're going to be okay. All right? Open the computer case. Before you open the computer case, the only thing I do, I guess, in place of the ground strap, and the way I was taught, is I do rub the outside of the case mod with my hands a few times, and any electricity that might be in my hands, it takes it into that case mod, basically. You open the computer case, find the slot, insert it, attach it. Most NIC cards have a bracket with a screw, or if it's a newer computer, it's just a bracket you click in and drop in and snaps. Verify the cables. Most of your NIC cards have no cables. There's some older NIC cards that might have like a cable from the NIC card to the CD-ROM drive or the hard drive port. But newer ones don't have that. None of your new ones have that. But if they did have that and you got a newer one, if an older one did have that and you got a new one, more than likely your newer one's not going to have the cable slot that the old one did to plug in anyway. Replace the cover, turn it on, configure the NIC software. Now, we're not going to configure software tonight or even start these up, but what I always recommend to students to do is, and you'll see in the handout in a second, is you have the CD-ROM it comes with, right? You put that in the CD-ROM tray and shut the tray. Unplug everything like I told you to. Take the case off. Take the old NIC out. Put the new NIC in. Put the case back on. Plug it in. Put the peripherals all plugged back in. Then when you start up, that CD is already going to be in your drive. And one of the first things Windows will do is, when it can't find the drivers on a local C drive, it's going to look for it on the DVD or the CD drive initially, okay? So I do recommend putting the CD, or it's going to be a CD they give you in the drive prior to unplugging it and shutting it down. That'll save you a lot of time. Otherwise, you have to real quickly hit the CD-ROM button to pop it out and then plug it back in. So, that'll save you a little time. So proper installation. Whoa. I think we're having some issues with RVC mail again. Wow. Okay. A properly installed NIC card. Only thing you need to worry about here is this. It's not really worry about. Is this right here. Right there, where I'm pointing to. You do not want to see any metal whatsoever show on the top where it's seated. Okay? No metal whatsoever. If metal tine is showing, it's not seated properly. Okay? Also, when you're seating the NIC card, I always tell students to stand right over the top of it. It'll help your back if you're doing this for a living in the future, maybe. And then also, when you put the NIC card, just let it set on top of the slot first. Let it sit there. Just let it sit there. And then gently rock it in left and right all the way down until it seats properly. Make sense? Okay? And so if you do that, you'll be fine. Won't have any problems. The one thing you don't want to do is just go over the top of it, look at it, and you just shove it in. You don't want to do that. What I generally do is barely set it on the NIC, on the slot, make sure everything's lined up, make sure it looks good, then gently just rock it, into the slot till everything's seated properly. It won't snap or it won't, click. You won't hear any of that. You just won't have any more movement. You won't be able to go like this anymore. It'll be seated all the way down. Okay? Because it does fit in there tight. It's not going to be a loose connection. If it is a loose connection, it won't work whenever you start up your computer. PCMI installation, I've already talked a little bit about that, and you guys will probably never see this as well, but you could. You could walk into a business and they still have these old laptops around, maybe in an R&D area, I don't know, and you might have to play with these. Somebody might have it. The only thing I recommend on this one is never take the card out. Always leave it plugged in. Always keep it plugged in and you're good to go. There's no reason really to ever take the card out anyway. Once I'm talking about what that gentleman's holding on to, keep it plugged in. Don't ever take it out like they're taking it out. Leave it in. And it'll be seated all the way into the laptop. It'll be shoved all the way in. You won't see any of this. All you'll see is this here, if it's seated correctly into the laptop. And these are older laptops it's showing, but you still might see some around when you're working. Modern operating systems do not require a start if you put a PCMI card. Servers do have multiple NIC card capabilities, and it just says here in the book to repeat the installation process for each additional NIC. Choose different slot. The other alternative is choose the same slot. So I don't know why. Okay, I'll choose a different slot. Okay, it makes sense. Yes?
Would a server that has multiple NICs have multiple IP addresses?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it could definitely have multiple IP addresses. Yeah, it would definitely have multiple IP addresses. Yeah. So pretty common. It's just common sense, really. A lot of the stuff on NIC cards. Device drivers already mentioned. Just put the CD-ROM in prior to booting up. When you purchase your PC, most of your drivers are going to be installed for the most part. And in Windows 7, actually, I think on all the new NIC cards, like 3Com, which is the most popular, we'll just leave it at that. 3Com has all the drivers for 3Com within the last 2 years built into Windows 7 operating system. So more than likely, you're not even going to have to install the driver, but they always give you the driver anyway. That makes sense? So it's always good practice to put the CD-ROM in the drive like I do, just in case you might need it. Then it talks about adding hardware to computer. Sometimes you will have to install drivers. The book says you must install drivers. You generally don't have to do anything anymore when it comes to Windows 7, Vista. The way it's designed is it looks for if it's on a local. If it's not on a local, it knows locations a company's given them to go to find that information, okay, for drivers. Now, if it's a NIC card, it's not going to be able to go anywhere but local because it's not going to be connected to the internet. So in that case, you will need, if it's not on the local, you will need a CD drive for that, okay? Operating system, built-in drivers already mentioned, it recognized automatically. Drivers not available from the operating system will have you to install and configure that NIC, generally with a CD, okay? So, fairly straightforward on NIC installation and NIC hardware. Times you have to replace them on older computers or even newer computers is when a power surge occurs in your house or at work. On a scale from 1 to 10, 1 being easy, 10 being difficult, it's around a 1 or 2, okay, installation of a NIC card. But it is something you need to know how to do, and you'll probably will have to do in the life cycle of working and networking, okay, if you haven't already had to do already, okay? So let's go ahead and do this. Do you guys want to take a break or go right into the lab?
We can do home ecto lab?
Yes.
Right into the lab.
Lab? Okay, we'll do it. Let's do it. All right, here we go.